What's going on, everybody? How do you choose an e-bike? What's your recommendation, citizen? Which one should I buy, this one or that one? I don't know, man. I don't know anything about you or what you're gonna use it for. So it's pretty hard for me to make a recommendation, but I get that email constantly. Tons of emails, tons of comments asking me which bike they should buy. And it's always like they give me just this like tiny little bit of information. Like, I'm gonna ride it on trails. Or I'm 6'2", 280, which bike do I buy? I don't know. There's so much more that goes into it than that. So rather, in this video, instead of just giving you bike recommendations, I'm gonna tell you, I think, some of the main things you need to consider if you're e-bike shopping, right? And also too, before I forget, check my reviews and comparisons playlist. You might find a video on the actual bike you're looking at buying, so check that out. But that's a very common question I get, you know, should I get this bike or that bike? And there's a lot of questions that I would have before I would even try to make an answer. So today I'm going to cover main things I think you should consider as you're e-bike shopping, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through them. So let's get started. All right, well, let's start our ride on this Himiway Zebra bike. And I made a couple alterations to this bike. I put on a suspension seat post, take a little sting out of the bumps. I put on a stem riser just to give it a little bit more upright ride position. And the first video I did on this bike, I changed out the tires. I put on these gigantic Origin 8 Tsunami 4.9 inch tires. They are absolutely massive. This thing looks like a bulldozer going down the road. It's a really, really cool look. I'm digging it. I couldn't even run the fenders because the tires were so big on this bike. But this is an example of a fat tire bike that is very eye-catching, right? I love the looks of this thing. It looks really sharp. And these 26x4 fat tires, man, they get a lot of attention going down the street. If you want attention, you want to be riding this just absolute bulldozer of a bike, one of these bikes is certainly one to consider. I'll link it below so you can check it out. But that's my first thing I'm going to tell you. If you're buying an e-bike, you got to think about what you're going to use it for, right? If you're going to be off-roading it, you're going to use it for hunting, you're going to ride it trails through the woods, yeah, maybe you get a fat tire bike like this. If you need the fat tires to go over roots and sticks and sand and mud and snow, fat tire is going to be the bike for that. If you're going to be carrying a bunch of cargo, obviously you're going to look at a cargo bike. If you're going to be doing group rides with your friends, maybe like the moped style bikes, like the aerial rider, where you just kind of zip around and it's kind of like a miniature motorcycle. Or, you know, maybe you are just going to do this. You're just going to ride on the bike paths and trails in greenways. And for that, maybe you get more of a commuter style bike. Maybe something like this. Now I'm on a Euphree City Robin. This is the kind of bike I'd get for paved bike paths like this, or if I was just going to be using it riding around my city, I'd go for maybe something like this, the skinny tire bikes. Gonna have a lot less rolling resistance than the fat tire bike. And also, this is good if you just want the feeling of you're riding a regular bicycle. That's what I get when I ride this. Just feels like a regular bike, doesn't feel like that juggernaut of an e-bike. And another thing that this brings out, another thing to consider, is weight. Weight is the #1 complaint that I hear about e-bikes. They just weigh too much. And this thing weighs about 20 pounds less than that Zebra bike I was just on. And that's a big factor. You know, can you handle the weight of an e-bike? Really take that to heart, to consideration. Do you live in a 1-bedroom apartment and you got to take it up and down a flight of stairs, or you're going to be loading it on a bike rack? The weight is going to come into play, so really think about that. All right, the next thing I'll ask you is, do you have a place to store the bike, right? You don't want to get a giant 26x4 fat tire bike if you don't have a spot to put it. I bought a used Rad Rover off a woman once that lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, and the Rad Rover was just like sitting in the hallway in her apartment, and it was huge. You could barely walk around the thing. So think about if you got a place to store the bike. I mean, you can't really leave it outside in the weather, can't leave it in the rain. Plus, it's got a lithium battery pack, so you don't want that to get in the extreme hot or the extreme cold. Probably going to ruin the battery. So think about where you're going to keep it. Think about the terrain you're going to be riding on. If you're not going to be off-road in like mud and sand and dirt and soft ground where you need fat tires, then they don't really serve you any benefit other than that. I mean, there's more rolling resistance, they're heavier, and they're louder. So think about, you know, what kind of ground you're going to be riding on. And also too, is there a lot of hills where you live? You want to get a bike that's got enough power to tackle the hills. If you live at the beach, it's totally flat, you'd be fine with like maybe a 500 watt motor, maybe even 350. If you live in the mountains of West Virginia then that's not going to work. You're going to have to either get a mid-drive or maybe 750 or 1,000 watt motor to tackle the hills easily. So think about how hilly it is where you live. That's a big factor. All right, the next thing I'll tell you to consider would be your stature and your mobility. So, I mean, you hear me just keep talking about the 26x4 fat tire bikes, right? Because that's the craze. That's what everybody's buying right now. And those don't work for everybody. Those bikes are absolutely huge. I say it over and over again on this channel that they're enormous. That is not your typical, 26-inch mountain bike from Walmart. You stick it next to one of those, the fat tire bike just dwarfs it. They're enormous. They weigh like 70, 80, 90 pounds, and they're huge. And it would be my recommendation to you that if you are not at least 5'7", I don't know that I would get one of those bikes. I would probably maybe get something like this. Now we're on a Magicycle Ocelot Pro bike, a 20-inch wheel bike. This is the size of bike I'd buy if I was 5'5", 5'4", maybe less. It's gonna be a lot easier to get off and on. And I know people think, okay, 20-inch wheel bike, that's a kid's bike. This is not a kid's bike at all. It's pretty large. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall. I can ride this bike very comfortably, and it's got a low step through. It's easy to get off and on. And it's definitely not a small bike. This bike weighs 78 pounds. So I'll pull over here so you can take a quick peek at this bike. So if you're a smaller stature, you're gonna wanna get something like this. It's not as small as it probably looks on camera. I've been kind of playing with this bike a little bit, trying to dress it up and make it as comfortable as that Cyrusher Komodo bike I've got, which I love the comfort of that bike. So I changed out the headlight on this. I put a stem riser on there. I put on the bar end mirror so I can see behind me. We got a suspension seat post on there along with the spring-loaded giant cushy seat. I added some spoke skins to give it a little bit of flashy look. I think it's a pretty sick looking bike. I think this is going to be a popular one, but this, is an example of a bike for a shorter person, right? You got to buy a bike that fits you. I don't know how many times, oh my gosh, that people have said, I bought this Rad Rover and I can't even ride the thing. Now, another thing about this bike is the step through design. That's important if you've got mobility issues. Because I think a lot of these 60, 70-year-old guys, right, they're like, I'm gonna get a Himiway. And they go out and they buy a Himiway Cruiser or whatever fat tire bike like that. And then they throw a bag on the rear rack, and all of a sudden the back end of the bike is like 37 inches tall. And they're like, I can't swing my leg over that. The thing, I got bad knees. You got to take that into consideration. Did you have some knee replacements or hip replacements, or how mobile are you? Can you get your leg up over the bike you're going to buy? All right, and one of the last things I'm going to bring up is what is your comfort level with maintenance and repairs? This is a bicycle. You might have to change a flat tire or clean the chain, adjust the derailleur, do basic bike stuff, right? But it is also an e-bike. So there are a bunch of electrical components on this bike. And if those break, the company might be able to get you replacement parts under warranty, but you are going to have to install those yourself. If the battery goes bad, the controller goes bad, the screen, the motor, whatever, they may give you the parts. But those companies, they're not going to do the work for you. You're going to have to do that yourself. You can't take one of these bikes to a local bike shop and expect them to fix it. That's a big thing to consider. They don't like to touch these bikes. If it's a bicycle thing, you need your brakes adjusted or something like that, they might do it for you. But if you burn out the motor on your e-bike, and whatever brand e-bike it is, and they send you a replacement motor, you are going to have to put that in there yourself. Can you do that? Now, if you're saying, oh my gosh, I can't, I don't want to do that, then you need to really strongly consider maybe buying an electric bike from your bike shop that, a brand that they carry. Go to your Trek bike shop and they carry the Trek e-bikes in there, right? They're going to service and repair those. You can't take your Himiway or Magicycle, your Rad Rover, whatever the heck it is that you bought. You can't take that to your local bike shop and say, hey, I burnt the motor out. Can you put a new one in? They're going to say, nope, we don't do that. For the most part, most of them are going to say that. So what is your comfort level with doing repairs should the worst case scenario happen and something breaks? All right, now that you've considered all these things, and maybe you've got it narrowed down to like 2 or 3 bikes, right? They're all in that same category. You just can't decide which brand to buy. Which brand should you buy? Well, I've been on a lot of bikes. I've lost track at this point, probably more than 40. And The harsh reality of it is they're largely the same. I mean, they all use the same basic frame designs, the same basic components. You know, they all have similar power for the most part. They're not crazy different. They're all going to have the same kind of level of customer service for you. So I don't know that it really makes a huge difference which brand you buy. I don't rep any brand. I mean, a lot of different companies send me bikes. I'll do reviews and comparisons and videos and stuff, but you know, they don't sponsor me, they don't pay me, they don't commission me, nothing like that. So I don't care what brand you buy. I always tell people, just buy the one that speaks to you. If you're looking at two bikes that have identical components on them, just which one do you think looks better? Which one are you feeling more? That's the one I would go for. Okay, now let me leave you with some parting words of wisdom. So here's my words of wisdom for you. Don't agonize over the little stuff. Don't worry about the seat or the headlight or, you know, whatever. The small little things that can be changed easily. Focus on the big things. Here's the big things. The power. Make sure you get a bike that's got adequate power for what you're going to use it for. You live in a really hilly spot, you're going to want to get a bike that's got some decent power, okay? That's pretty hard to change after the fact. The next thing is a big one, the battery. Make sure you get a bike that has adequate battery capacity for what you're going to use it for. If you're going to be doing like 50, 60 mile rides in a day, you got to get a big battery pack. Get a big battery pack from the start. It's really hard to add additional battery capacity after the fact. You might be able to find an aftermarket battery that clicks into your battery cradle, but I mean, if you want to upgrade to like 20 amp hours or larger, I mean, you're going to pay like $800 for that thing. So do you want to go out and spend another $800 to get a battery that works for you? And if you don't find one that just clicks into your regular battery cradle there, and you got to just buy a battery pack and wire it in, I mean, you're going to be soldering on new battery connections and all that, and finding a spot and a way to mount it on your rear rack or something. So really think about that. Find the bike that's got the big battery pack, and right from the get-go, if you're going to need battery capacity. And let's see, I guess the last thing would be pick the right frame style and the right style of bike, you know, cargo, commuter, fat bike, whatever it is. Pick the right style from the get-go. You can't change the frame and the style of the bike after the fact. So make sure you get that, and think about that weight and size, right? I highly recommend, before you go buy the 26x4 fat tire bike, go see one in person so you understand how big that bike is. And you might say, okay, well, I don't know anybody that has one. I don't know how I see those. You can only look them online. Here's what you do. Go to Cabela's, or do they still have Gander Mountains? I don't know. Or Bass Pro Shop. A lot of times they have fat bikes in the back section by like the boats and the side-by-sides and all that. I was in Cabela's the other day and I saw they had a couple, like, I think they were Quiet Cat bikes in there, 26x4 fat tire bikes. So go to Cabela's. They might have a fat tire bike there you can actually get on and sit on and look at and get a comprehension of how large it is and if you can ride it or not. So there you go, tip of the day. I hope that you found this, boy, this thing's jumpy, it's got a lot of power. I hope you found this video helpful. That's kind of my goal, give you some help, since I've had the good fortune of being able to get out on all these different styles of e-bikes. If you like content like this, consider hitting that subscribe button, hanging out, checking out some more content. Appreciate all of you for watching. That's all for today. Thanks.